Live from Pier 3 in San Francisco, welcome to Bloomberg West, where we cover the global technology and media companies that are reshaping our world. I'm Emily Chang. Our focus is on innovation, technology, and the future of business. Let's get straight to the rundown. Demand is high for Facebook's IPO as bankers close their books, with insiders selling another 84 million shares. That means the company could raise more than $16 billion in what may be one of the biggest IPOs in history. She's the female face of Facebook and maybe just as important to the company as Mark Zuckerberg. We take an in-depth look at COO Sheryl Sandberg and whether she has her sights on eventually going back to Washington. And from Instagram to Lightbox to Tagtile, Facebook has been busy making acquisitions in recent months. We will take a look at what other companies may catch Facebook's eye post-IPO. But first, to the lead. Facebook is in the home stretch as the social network finishes taking orders for its IPO. Insiders are selling even more shares. Goldman Sachs is now selling 44% of its stake, Excel selling 24%, Russian billionaire Yuri Milner's DST 35%. Mark Zuckerberg isn't selling any more shares, but the extra sales decrease his voting power slightly from 57.3% to 55.8%. That is in part because Milner gave voting rights for his shares to Zuckerberg. Now, the insider share sales show demand is high, but raises questions about why investors are getting out so soon. The last stretch of Facebook's road to the IPO hasn't been entirely smooth. General Motors just announced it's pulling its Facebook ad budget, but Ford fired back, saying it's accelerating its advertising efforts on the social network. Brands aside, Facebook is on track to go public this Friday. And for more on where the road to the IPO goes from here, let's bring in our senior West Coast correspondent, John Ehrlichman. John, what's the latest?
So they are off the road. Roadshow is done. You move on. I don't know where you move. The sidewalk? They're moving on is the point here. Here's some of the backstory on what's been going on with the Facebook IPO. Morgan Stanley, according to one source of ours, told all the potential investors last night, that's it. The books are closed. You've had quite some time to put your orders in. No more orders at this point. And then that sets us up for tomorrow. That is the day of the pricing being expected from Facebook. Is it at $36 or $38, even more? Who knows what it's going to be, but ultimately it's in Morgan Stanley's hands to determine the demand and supply. And there's always an argument for pushing up the price of the deal if it's going to ultimately mean more money, but there's always an argument on the other side to make the price favorable to the investors who are participating in the IPO. And then you also saw there the next part of the story, which is on Friday, when we are expecting, according to a source, for a splashy NASDAQ IPO listing at Facebook's headquarters as opposed to being in New York. And we're expecting that the CEO of the NASDAQ, Bob Greifeld, is going to be there too. And why wouldn't he be there? I mean, this is a huge event for that company. And then, Emily Chang, get your trading shoes on.
Right. Also expecting Mark and Sheryl Sandberg to be there as well. Now, John, a lot of anxious investors still out there. When does everybody find out whether or not they are getting shares in this IPO?
You know, the way it works is you go home, you go to bed Thursday night, you wake up Friday morning, you go into the office and you check your messages and you either have shares or you don't. But the bigger important part of that is you get that notification before the IPO takes place. So if you're somebody who's participating in this IPO because you want to sell immediately after the shares start trading, you have that opportunity. You know, there was a big investor conference in town today where one institutional investor said, sure, I know there are some concerns about Facebook going forward and the advertising growth, but how could I not want to participate in the IPO if only for what could happen on IPO day? So this is very important. There are two mindsets. Remember, there are those who get to participate in the IPO and those who have to participate after the IPO if there is a pop, and certainly your thinking on the stock is different in both of those situations. Emily?
And we'll be watching for all of that potential action on Friday. Thanks, John. Now, potential Facebook investors are concerned about how Facebook can keep making money and grow its advertising sales, and GM's announcement that it will stop buying ads on the social network didn't help. So how healthy is Facebook's ad business? Our Bloomberg West editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, is here with the drill down. Corey, a lot of questions about this. The timing very interesting. Also, just days ahead of this IPO.
Yeah, well, you know, looking at these metrics, if you're going to figure the price of this deal, you got to figure out what the business is going to look like in the future, because obviously it's priced at a multiple to its current results, in this case an extraordinarily high multiple. So what are those numbers and what do they look like? So I want to take you through just a little bit of basic math here. Let me show you what I think one of the most important metrics, which is the daily active users that Facebook's given this number on. Now, we've heard the 901 million monthly users, but on a daily basis, they told us at the end of the fourth quarter, December 31, it was $483 million, and at the end of the first quarter of this year, $526 million. But here's what's really important. Not this number. Those numbers. March 31st. That's one day. December 31st. That's one day. That's the count on that day. So to understand what happened in the first quarter, you've got to look at the average of those two numbers to know what the first quarter average daily users are between these two numbers. Of course, it could have dipped even lower and come back, but most likely a number between here and average. So the average daily active users for the first quarter was $505 million. So then once you divide revenues against that number, then you can start to figure out what the revenue per active user is. So here's the trend that I think is really important, which is the daily active user revenue on average. Let me show you what it was for 6 quarters here. For 6 quarters, you see it going from $2.24 per user, bumping along, kind of edging up a little bit. You know, on a year-over-year basis, you go from Q4 2010 to Q4 2011 from $2.24 to $2.34. First quarter, $1.97 to $2.01. So it's growing, but growing slowly. Emily?
Now, Corey, it's still going up, though. So isn't that good overall?
Well, the pace of change, I mean, I'm always talking about this. The pace of change is the important thing. Let me show you the percentages of growth. And that's when you start to see a real trend. Because this number is bumpy, but this shows you a kind of steady trend here. So the year-over-year growth numbers, 33%, 28%, 33%. But then it drops here, 5%. 2%. This is year-over-year growth. So to me, this is a pretty consistent trend, and it's a trend in the wrong direction for Facebook.
Corey, you only have 5 columns on that chart. What about your usual 6? Are you getting lazy?
I'm tired. This whole Facebook thing's exhausting. No, well, important point, right? We don't have a lot of history with Facebook. Facebook doesn't even give us numbers going back far enough to see those average changes more than those couple of quarters. So they're trying to find out what's happening with their business. Investors are going to find out. We're trying to find out. But there's a long ways to go to understand what's really happening with the Facebook business.
Still a lot of unanswered questions. Thanks so much, Corey. Now, to better help us understand the state of ad sales on Facebook and the reasoning behind GM's decision, I want to bring in Michael Sisson, CEO of SynCaps, a company that helps businesses advertise on social media sites. He joins us now from New York. Michael, you wrote a column today, Why Facebook Isn't Screwed When It Comes to Auto Marketing. GM pulling its budget, Ford going full speed ahead. How does that add up?
I had a great conversation with General Motors today, and I think one thing, just to set the record straight, they haven't pulled their budget indefinitely. They are going to continue to do things on Facebook. They are continuing to look at the different advertising programs on Facebook, and I don't think it's reasonable to assume that General Motors will not have ads running on the site a week from now. What they did do was make a change to how they're advertising and the rate and the amount that they're advertising. I think General Motors, in all of its divisions, will still advertise on Facebook from everything that I've heard so far.
Okay, the question remains, though, brands can get advertising on Facebook for free, so why pay for it?
Sure. You know, brands can get advertising on Facebook for free, which is one of the really appealing things about Facebook, that it lets brands connect with their customers in a way that's free and authentic and lets them share that content. However, if the brand wants to get reach and they want to amplify their message and amplify their creativity, they need to write a check to Facebook. And that check grants brands access to syndicate that content across those 900 million people and to really build engagement across a much wider base.
Yet everyone sort of acknowledges that it's pretty early days for advertising on Facebook. What sort of metrics are out there that show that this kind of advertising actually works?
Sure, and I think it really depends on what your objectives are, because if you're looking at a loyalty objective, you're obviously looking at a measure in terms of, are we finding users that we believe are going to be more loyal to our brand? Are they being more loyal? If you're looking at driving brand awareness, a lot of the traditional measures around reach, frequency, and impact that have existed since the dawn of time still really do exist on Facebook. And Facebook, with 900+ million people, still is an important avenue to drive that reach, frequency, and impact. I guess if you're using it from a direct response mechanic, you're going to buy media differently, you're going to measure media differently, and you're going to have a whole different set of metrics depending on which objective the company is looking to drive.
You say in your column that Facebook advertising is hard. How hard is it, and is that intimidating some of these brands from moving forward or doing this the right way?
Sure, and I think the point of my article is that change is hard, and what Facebook represents is a world where a media advertiser, an advertiser would historically plan a campaign, they'd write a brief, they'd brief their agency would take it back, they'd think about it, they'd make a television commercial or print campaign, they'd think about planning media, they'd plan media, they'd buy it. And Facebook's changed all that. They've made it real time, they've made it about dialogue, they've made it about having to create engaging content constantly, and that is hard for a brand. As a single brand, if you're a multinational corporation like General Motors, who has tons of languages and has tons of brands to represent, it's going to be even more challenging to bring that kind of operational change across your agencies. That said, General Motors is making a lot of progressive steps. I ran some research on their fan pages today, and they do have a very engaged fan base, which is very consistent with what Joel mentioned in passing to the Wall Street Journal.
What about mobile, though? This is an area Facebook hasn't monetized yet more users are accessing Facebook on their mobile devices, and there are no ads there. Do brands consider that a big disadvantage?
I think that they do to some point, but to the same degree, brands don't really have a great mobile presence to drive users to. So what you end up with is, a sponsored message or something appearing in someone's news feed that they can find out more about the brand. If it's about measuring clicks, most brands don't have mobile websites. So I think Facebook has a lot of opportunity still to drive mobile revenue, and that's really a wide open ocean for them moving forward.
Untapped opportunity. Okay, Michael Sissons, CEO of SingCaps, thanks so much for joining us today. Coming up, Sheryl Sandberg has been considered the adult supervision at Facebook and helped take the company from hot startup to one of the biggest, potentially, IPOs ever. Coming up, we take a closer look at one of the most powerful women in technology. Plus, it is one of the biggest questions on investors' minds. Is Facebook really worth more than $100 billion? Tonight, Bloomberg TV will break down the numbers in a special program. Tune in at 9:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific for the $100 billion question. Welcome back. I'm Emily Chang. While Facebook's bankers are settling the final details ahead of the IPO, the social network is quietly searching for new board members. Bloomberg has learned Facebook wants more diversity on its all-male board and is considering adding at least one woman. The company has been criticized for its lack of women directors, even though a majority of its users are female, and several women hold powerful executive roles. That includes Sheryl Sandberg, who's not just Facebook's chief operating officer, but arguably one of the most powerful women in the world. Zuckerberg may have created Facebook, but Sandberg helped turn it into one of the world's most successful businesses.
In just 4 years, Sheryl Sandberg has helped grow Facebook's ad business to more than $3.2 billion and brought adult supervision to its hacker culture.
All the global Ad Age 100 advertisers are Facebook clients. And this is important because on average, they spend about $1 billion a year each on marketing.
She has brought gravitas, certainly, maturity. She has been a beacon of attention in a very, very good way for the company. And I think she's looked at as really being the figurehead of the company.
It's widely known the COO has even disagreed with CEO Mark Zuckerberg on key strategic issues. He remains passionate about entering China. She's worried about the compromises Facebook will have to make, especially given her prior experience working at Google. Her departure for Google's biggest competitor may have been one of the search giant's biggest losses. But could losing Sandberg be one of Facebook's biggest losses at some point, too? Her leaving is listed as a risk factor in Facebook's S1.
It would be terrible for Facebook if Sheryl Sandberg left. It would be just horrible. I can't imagine how bad it would be.
Still, Sandberg isn't on Facebook's board, a star-studded cast of Silicon Valley heavyweights, none of whom are women.
There's been such a hullabaloo about no women on the board of Facebook, and it's ridiculous. One, because this is not a boys' club. Sheryl and the team who work for her are very much in control of much of what goes on at that company. Two, the board is there to offer advice to Mark, but has no say. So as long as Mark has the voting control, he's the only board member who really, really matters.
And while most agree Zuckerberg will never leave Facebook, it's also understood this probably isn't Sandberg's last stop. As one-time chief of staff for Larry Summers at the Treasury, she's very much maintained her Washington ways, throwing parties and fundraisers in her home, including a recent one for President Obama. There's been much speculation about her own political ambitions, that she might one day be a governor, a senator, even president.
I think she has the capability to be, almost anything she wants to be in business or politics. I often joke to her when I see her that I will support her presidential campaign.
So as Sandberg guides Facebook down the road to IPO, there may well be a fork in the road that will take her somewhere else someday.
Bloomberg has learned Sheryl Sandberg will join company executives, including Mark Zuckerberg, to help ring NASDAQ's opening bell on Friday from the company's headquarters in Menlo Park. And we do have some breaking news to tell you about quickly. Facebook is looking to dismiss Yahoo's patent lawsuit disputing Yahoo's claims the patents are unenforceable. We know now that Yahoo is just recently under new management with interim CEO Ross Levinson, so we'll be watching for how Yahoo handles this suit going forward. Meantime, another story we'd like to tell you about today. Ever wish you could share a single data plan among all your devices? Well, it could happen as soon as this summer, and experts say it could be a game changer. Bloomberg's Gigi Stone joins us now from New York with that story. Gigi, a lot of consumers want to know about this.
It's true, Emily. We all have so many different gadgets these days. Most people opt to stick with Wi-Fi instead of having to pay separate data bills for cell service on each of them, your iPhone, your iPad, etc. All of that is about to change. Both Verizon and AT&T are getting ready to roll out so-called shared data pricing plans that spread across devices. But right now, they're in a bit of a game of chicken to see who's going to make that first move. Both companies are a little hesitant to test the waters first because this is really going to transform the way the industry charges for wireless service. And frankly, there are billions of dollars at stake here. The new shared plans may be announced as early as next month, and Verizon is already saying unlimited data plans will go away completely when this happens. The new plans, the shared plans, would let customers pay for one load of internet data and then use that on all of their different wireless devices. This would obviously be more economical as an option for families, for small businesses, or really anyone who has a lot of web-connected gadgets, which is basically a lot of us, kind of like how they already have those cheaper shared family plans for phone calls, Emily.
So, Gigi, why are the wireless companies so nervous to go ahead with this?
The wireless companies, Emily, know this is an inevitable next step. It's going to happen. But neither of them, any of them, they don't want to be the guinea pig because it's so crucial for them to get this approach exactly right. If they're able to do this well, it could reduce customer turnover. It could get more users to embrace data plans, which, of course, brought in nearly $63 billion industry-wide last year. However, a wrong move could be serious. It could lower the amount of money that subscribers pay. At the same time, it would increase network traffic and, of course, the cost of maintaining all these networks. And Craig Moffett at Sanford Bernstein put it this way. He says, with more devices tied to the same data plan, the unused portion of data would shrink. That would force carriers to ramp up their capital spending. So it wouldn't be good for business, Emily.
Carriers having to balance a lot of things. Bloomberg's Gigi Stone in New York. Thanks so much. We'll be right back with more of Bloomberg West. NetSuite, one of the largest and most important cloud computing companies, out with big news this week. Our editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, has more on this from the newsroom. Corey?
Yeah, Emily, NetSuite's expanding its cloud services and partnering with Square, a company we talk about once in a while. New product called Suite Commerce. But this is a big change for this company because they're going from the back end to the front end. Zach Nelson, CEO of NetSuite, we were talking about this last night. But Explain this to me, because you guys have had this cloud-based service to help companies run their back end, but not really offered the front end part of the business. Why do this now?
Well, the world of commerce is changing. You know, customers, when they interact with your business, expect to be able to interact with you on their phone, in their automobile, on a website, all of these new touch points. And interestingly enough, NetSuite built a system designed to run a business, and then we delivered it over the internet. So historically, we allow our users to access that through a dashboard. We figured out very early on that we could put a website on the front end of that, so our customers could expose that same operational system to their users. And so
in other words, it used to be that your users would control it through the web, obviously, but the customer would have to, a customer interface would be something completely different from another company, something they design themselves.
Something they design themselves. And now what we've effectively done is enabled our customers to put any user interface on top of their operational system, so the customer can interact directly with their company through NetSuite. So they can shop on their iPhone, transaction goes into NetSuite, then all the processes inside that company kick off, the shipping, the receiving, the billing, etc.
And they used to do that same transaction, but with a different piece, somebody else's software.
We had a front end on it, but it wasn't as flexible as this is. The other thing that's changed is our original front end to this would really allow online e-commerce.
Right.
But there's so many channels now where customers want to interact with your business. They want to interact not just on your website, in the phone. When you walk into a retail setting, they want you to recognize them there as well. So how do you attach all these touch points that the consumer is driving to your business operations?
Is this because more companies are on the web, or more, let me rephrase that, more companies are doing e-commerce, and they want, it used to be they'd take a cookie cutter approach, but now they want something really highly specialized?
Well, that's part of it. They want to control every pixel on that screen, number one, but that's only part of the experience. The other part of the experience is when that transaction happens with the customer, how efficiently do you process it? And historically, you've had to go through many layers, many systems, and finally it hits your operational system. And that causes enormous friction. What we've effectively done is taken out all the friction. We've given our customers the ability to control every pixel on the screen, but then those transactions go straight into their operational system, NetSuite, to be processed.
Why didn't you do this before? It seems like an obvious thing you would have done right from the start.
Well, we did it primarily for websites. What we've changed here now has been driven by consumer demand. Consumers are saying, I don't want to just interoperate with you on the website. I want to interoperate with you on my phone. When I go into that point of sale world, I want you to recognize me. And really, so think about the experience you have with Apple. No matter where you touch Apple, the retail store, the iPhone, iTunes, it recognizes you and it treats you the same and actually treats you very well. It's probably the consumer's best experience. And that's effectively what we're enabling every company to deliver.
It's really interesting. Also interesting, again, it's sold software as a service. So does this, because you sell it in chunks like this, do you think you're going to see an impact on revenues right away, or is it going to roll out over the next year? Like, when does this really start?
Well, I think we're going to be overwhelmed by demand because every company is trying to figure out how they deliver that Apple-like experience to their customers, that channel agnostic, I recognize you, I deliver great service experience. So we're actually limiting the release of this year to about 100 companies because we think we're going to be overwhelmed with demand. We're building up our services force. We're training our partners, guys like Deloitte and Accenture, to help us in this world.
Zach Nelson, CEO of NetSuite, really appreciate you coming by. Interesting story, interesting change in your product. All right, we'll be right back with lots more on Facebook and more on Bloomberg West continues.
You are watching Bloomberg West, where we focus on technology and the future of business. I'm Emily Chang with this hour's Bloomberg Top Headlines. Dish Network is responding to criticism over its new technology, which allows customers to skip some primetime ads. CEO Joseph Clayton says he respects the networks and their advertising model, but satisfying his customers is his top mission. Network executives have blasted the new AutoHop service, a hot conversation topic as the networks pitch their new shows to advertisers this week. Viacom and Time Warner Cable have settled a long-running dispute over streaming programs. The news means Time Warner subscribers will now be able to watch Viacom channels like MTV and Comedy Central on their iPads and other devices as long as they're at home. Sources tell Bloomberg Time Warner will not have to pay more to stream the program. And he brought the story of Facebook to the big screen. Now the man who wrote the social network is going to bring the story of Steve Jobs to the big screen as well. Sony has picked Aaron Sorkin to write and direct a film on the Apple co-founder's life. The movie will be based on Walter Isaacson's best-selling biography of Jobs. It will be Sorkin's directing debut. It's no secret that on the road to IPO, Facebook's been gobbling up a whole host of companies, the most high-profile deal being its billion-dollar purchase of Instagram. After the IPO, there are Big expectations for more deals, though. For more on that story, we bring in our senior West Coast correspondent, John Ehrlichman. Everybody wondering about who Facebook's going to buy next.
Yeah, and it continues this week. They just acquired the developer team behind a photo sharing app that is for the Android devices. And so that's one part of the story, that they do deals to acquire talent. But the other reason that they do deals is because the growth expectations are sky high.
3 years ago, nobody had heard of photo sharing service Instagram. It didn't exist. Today, it's part of Facebook, purchased in April for $1 billion. Instagram's not the only recent Facebook acquisition. It just bought customer loyalty app Tagtile and location-based app Glancy.
It'll be inevitable that they'll pursue other acquisitions for a couple of reasons. One is the law of large numbers.
Facebook has nearly 1 billion users. That's 40% of everybody on the internet. When you get that big, the challenge is to keep growing at the same rate.
There is a very high bar to satiate Wall Street.
One analyst even suggested Facebook might strike a deal with partner Microsoft to take control of the Bing search engine.
Is it really possible that Facebook could go out and buy Bing?
Sure, it's possible. I mean, they'll have the money. You know, it hasn't necessarily found its home with Microsoft.
But investment banking boutique Luma Partners says it's more likely Facebook will buy smaller analytics companies, algorithmic software companies, data management firms. Fancy titles, but a simple concept. Businesses that help advertisers buy ad space on Facebook. As for Mark Zuckerberg's approach to deals, he told Charlie Rose in November it's all about acquiring top talent.
We look at great entrepreneurs out there who are building things, and often the acquisitions aren't even to really buy their company or what they're doing. It's to get the really talented people who are out there trying to build something cool.
Meanwhile, Facebook just plunked down $550 million to buy hundreds of AOL patents from Microsoft. Given its patent fight with Yahoo and potentially others, analysts say more patent purchases for Facebook are a no-brainer.
I think they will continue to strengthen their intellectual property portfolio, and I would not be surprised at all if you saw them going to the market and acquiring more patents.
And since Instagram, it's all about what company is Facebook going to buy next. Then there's these video companies like Vidi and Social Cam,
Yeah.
the video equivalent of Instagram. But of course, Facebook can't buy every hot app out there.
I remember when Instagram was out raising money, there was one investor who said, you know, I should invest because Facebook's probably going to buy them. And then you end up looking like a rock star because Facebook does buy them. But making an investment as a venture capitalist based on the idea that Facebook's going to buy a company can be very risky, and that's something obviously that those VCs have to watch out for too.
All right, John Ehrlichman, thanks so much. Now, Facebook's public offering has often been compared to Google's back in 2004, but how does Facebook's advertising platform actually compare to Google's? Our editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, is in the newsroom with more on that. Corey?
Yeah, so to help us better understand Facebook's potential as a platform, Nissan Gabay, CEO of Social Labs, we've talked about this issue of what is Facebook going to be? What is Facebook going to be? Because they need to make more money to grow into this valuation. How are they going to do that?
Yeah, I think they have some huge opportunities both in the short term and in the long term. I think in the short term, I think people are underestimating how much revenue they can actually drive on Facebook.com itself as a site.
Well, why? Because the business has been around for a while. And, you know, I did a thing, I don't know if you saw at the beginning of the show, that showed that the revenue per user growth is decelerating almost alarmingly. I mean, it's gone from 33% year over year to 2%, and with a pretty steady decline. What makes you think they can turn it back on again?
Yeah. So, you know, I work with major advertisers, major online retailers every day at Sociable Labs, and what we see is that these companies really haven't even begun to advertise on Facebook. I'm actually shocked by how little money they're spending today on Facebook, and I think they all have plans to spend more. So I think what you saw with Google, there's an analogy here. When Google first came out and IPO'd, you know, people felt like the search engine marketing world was a one-trick pony and that there wasn't that much growth in it. I think Google has proved that wrong over the last few years, and I think Facebook will do similarly with their offering.
All right, well, so why is it shocking that they're not, or two questions. Why is it shocking? And if they're not spending more now, besides the fact that you think they should, why would they? I mean, what would make that change like that?
Yeah. Well, as the advertising becomes more targeted and they get more tools, they're going to come on board and advertise in more ways. I think Facebook has a lot of room to grow there in terms of the product that they offer to advertisers. So I think, like I said, I think it's very in its infancy in terms of people coming on board and advertising.
So the same advertisers spending more is their short-term solution.
And new advertisers that aren't currently advertising coming on board. I'm actually, quite frankly, the fact that they're generating $4 billion in revenue right now is impressive.
It's a big number.
Given how little we've seen people actually coming on board.
All right, so long term.
Yeah, long term.
I'm really interested by how much data they're compiling. I mean, maybe petabytes of data on users and who those users, individual, who I am, what I do across the web. We know if I log on to drugstore.com, I click using my Facebook credentials, Facebook is now sort of following the things that I do there, giving some of that information back to the drugstore, but they're also compiling who I am across the internet.
Yeah.
Is that the business they turn on long term?
Yes, I think that's the second point. There's a huge long-term opportunity for Facebook to monetize the internet off of Facebook. And what I mean by that is Facebook is becoming a critical part of every website, not just Facebook.com. So in our business, we provide software to websites that, in essence, enables them to bring Facebook-like features into their site and for users to publish activity back into Facebook for their friends to see. So, for example, one of our customers is wine.com. You can go to wine.com, see the wines that your friends have purchased or the wines that your friends like. So that type of experience, I think, is going to become standard across the web over the next 10 years.
So how does Facebook get more revenue from that business?
Good question. So today, Facebook has, the social graph, your social identity, and your friendships. By integrating into these other websites, they're now gaining data on your interests, on what you like, what you're shopping for, what you're consuming online. So in essence, they're marrying the perfect storm of behavioral data, if you will, what people are doing on the web, with that social identity data. And that can be then used to drive better targeted advertising. It can also be used for those websites to run advertising against their own content.
So they'll charge an advertiser to run an ad, say at wine.com. If I'm looking at Oregon Pinot Noirs and wine.com, they'll know that I like those because I've seen them before and target an ad to me?
That is all potentially what is possible and what is already being put in place.
And I do like the Oregon Pinot Noirs.
Yeah.
What's not to like?
What's not to like?
So have they started doing this yet, or do you think this is the thing they're going to turn on sometime soon?
So it's begun in very small phases, and that's the tidal wave that we see is going to improve over the next few years as more and more sites get integrated. There's actually already 2.5 million websites that have integrated Facebook in some way onto their website. So this is not this is already a huge area as it is today. Facebook has yet to really monetize it fully. I think you look even further out. Now that Facebook has Facebook components and Facebook code on other websites, they can eventually actually run advertising on those sites as well. So not just on Facebook, but on wine.com, for example. Very similar to the way Google has AdSense as a product that they run on other websites.
That will be some social network. Nissan Gubay, Sociable Labs, interesting company. Facebook, not a little bit interesting as well. Emily?
Thanks, Corey. Coming up, have you ever searched Google and not found what you were looking for? Well, the search giant is now trying to change that. We are back with a top Google engineer next. And Facebook's valuation could top $100 billion when it goes public, but is the company really worth that much? Tonight, Bloomberg Television breaks it all down for you. Be sure to catch the $100 billion question at 9:30 Eastern and Pacific, only on Bloomberg. Welcome back. I'm Emily Chang. Google is revamping its search engine with a new feature called the Knowledge Graph. The tech giant says this will change how search results are delivered, connecting vague keywords to specific topics and providing answers, not just links. For more, let's bring in Ben Gomes, a longtime Google engineer who helped design the Knowledge Graph. He is at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California. Ben, welcome to Bloomberg West. First question, what exactly do you mean by the Knowledge Graph?
The Knowledge Graph is actually a mapping of things in the real world. It consists of the things in the real world and the connections between them. And the Knowledge Graph that we have created is really enormous. It's about 500 million things from the real world. and billions of connections screen them, over 3.5 billion of connections screen them. And we've been building this over the last 2 years. And what it enables us to do is change the entire search process when you're searching for a thing in the world. And it changes the process from the point where you're asking a query to the point, to the kind of information we can show you, to the kinds of things that you can do after you've done the query. And I can illustrate, I can talk about all the aspects of that.
So basically, as I understand it, I mean, I've looked at, I've had a preview of what the new search will look like, and basically what you're aiming to do, what Google is aiming to do, is understand the context of our searches better, so that it's not just a list of links that comes up, but categorized links. Is that right?
It's more than that, actually. So suppose today you type in a query like kings, right? It's just a string or a keyword to Google. But with our new knowledge graph, we actually understand that there are real-world entities. There's the Los Angeles Kings, the hockey team. There's a basketball team in Sacramento. And then more than that, there's also a TV show. So when you type in that query, it's an ambiguous query. And so what we can do is help you disambiguate the real-world entity that you meant. So we show you a list of disambiguations on the right that will help you pick the entity that you meant, the real-world thing you meant. And when you click on one of those entities, like the hockey team, for instance, we will show you search results purely about the hockey team, rather than a mixture of results about the different interpretation of the word kings. So we've gone from just a string, the word kings, to things in the real world. And we're referring to this internally as going from strings to things. And it makes a big difference in how we think about every aspect of search. And then once you actually get to a particular thing, say the hockey team, for instance, we can then show you key facts about that particular entity. So for instance, if you search for Frank Lloyd Wright, we will show you the projects associated with Frank Lloyd Wright, because we know those are the kinds of things that people are interested about in Frank Lloyd Wright. If on the other hand you search for an astronaut, we'll show you the amount of time they spent in space, or the missions that they were on. If you search for a rock band, we may show you what their performances are that are upcoming, what songs they put out, what albums they have. And beyond that, we can also help you get to other things that may be of interest to you. So for instance, if you search for the rock band, we can show you other related groups that people who search for this rock band also search for. So you may discover other things that you never even knew existed that are interesting to you. So we believe it changes the entire search process. Yeah.
Ben, in the spirit of disambiguation, as you say, why isn't this information included in Google search in the algorithm already?
Oh, it is. So when you do a search for kings today, you will see a mixture of these different interpretations of the word kings, because we're working with the keywords. So we'll show you results for the hockey team, the basketball team, as well as any other interpretations that might exist. But what we can do with the new technology is allow you to disambiguate to the particular meaning you intended. So you can go from just a string to the particular word meaning you wanted. You can go to a result set that's just about the hockey team or just about the basketball team without looking at a conflation of all these different kinds of results, which all apply to the word kings. So we've gone from that string kings to...
Is this new way of search available now? We're just looking at the King's search now. Is this available for every single term that you could possibly be searching for on the internet, or is it just a few things that are going to have these kinds of search results?
It's actually available for a large fraction of queries. You know, by comparison with other launches we've done, this launch actually covers a larger fraction of queries than our universal search launch, which we did many years ago, which was also a really big launch. You'll see these features associated with the knowledge graph on more queries than you see maps. So it will affect a significant number of searches. And more than that, it will only grow. We're just getting started. We've started with this database of like 500 million entities, and we're discovering newer and better ways to use this whole knowledge graph in the search process. So this is the first set of features we are launching, and we're expecting to launch a whole bunch more features in the future using this underlying technology.
Okay, Google rolling out its new knowledge graph. Ben Gomes, longtime engineer at Google, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, we brought you the story this week of Facebook co-founder Eduardo Saverin renouncing his U.S. citizenship just before the company's IPO. The move saved Saverin a very large sum of money by not having to pay U.S. taxes. How much? Stay tuned. This is Bloomberg West. I'm Emily Chang. When you're booking a flight online, oftentimes the best price wins. But what about when you're shopping for a new tech toy? That's the business behind Decide.com. John Ehrlichman is in the newsroom with more. John?
Emily, this is a company that started by a savvy guy named Mike Fridgen, who sold his previous business, Faircast, to Microsoft. Mike Fridgen is here with me now, and you guys also just announced an iPad app. But explain this to us. So you knew about price shopping for flights, and now you're bringing that to electronics, basically.
That's right. So thanks again for having me on, John. Yeah. So the when to buy question has never been such a problem for customers. If you look at price volatility, is happening more now than ever before, and there's a rapid pace of new products being entered in the market.
Although I would think that people would feel a little more comfortable doing their own price shopping for the stuff that's at Best Buy than a flight, which everybody, I mean, some people like certain airlines, but at the end of the day, the lowest price ultimately is the law for a lot of people.
Well, we see that in a given day, 20% of products having price changes, and 50% of the time they're actually going up. So there's a lot of volatility in prices, and we see 10 new products entering the market every single day.
So there ends up being then like a predictive ability with what you're doing too.
Exactly, and that's what we're all about. So we help people decide when to buy products. We're predicting if prices are going down, if you can save money, or if a newer version of the product's coming soon so you can avoid buyer's remorse and get the right product.
Did you know this from the beginning? I've spoken to the people at Shazam, and they now can predict who's going to have the next big hit based on what people are listening to. Is this kind of a side part, or did you think from the beginning, absolutely, we're going to go and be able to predict all this?
Right. Well, it's really from mining data. So we have over 18 billion price observations for products that we've looked at, and a large database of model lineages on hundreds of thousands of products. So it really came through that research where we discovered how volatile pricing was, and talking to customers, understanding what a large pain point this is.
And what's the market like competing? I mean, I would think that Amazon itself wants you to go there and be able to see all sorts of stuff already. Is that who you're competing with? Are you competing with Amazon?
Yeah, we're really trying to bring the next level of transparency to customers, which is new. I mean, there's really no one else in the market doing this today. So customers can shop at Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart. There's literally thousands of retailers in the market, and we're making it easy within a second to know should you buy or wait on that next purchase.
You've sold a business to Microsoft. Will you sell this business to Microsoft?
This is a much bigger category. If you think about it in terms of search, flights is about 1% of search queries on the internet.
Yeah.
Shopping's more like 15%.
It is huge.
We started in electronics and appliances, but we really want to bring this to all major categories. So the opportunity is just incredibly large.
Like, does Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer, do they go on Decide.com and look for their next gear? I think they can get good prices already, but...
if they want to make a more informed purchase decision, they will. And it's a huge market. We're talking about hundreds of billions purchased online and shopping, and over 50% of all shopping is influenced by online and growing with mobile. So it's just such a big opportunity to usher in this next level of transparency to help people be smarter.
Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Mike Fridgen. Emily, we'll send it back over to you.
Thanks, John. As we head to break, we just want to remind you, if we haven't reminded you enough, that tomorrow we start our in-depth coverage of Facebook's IPO an hour early, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. That is our special Facebook Goes Public. We'll be taking a close look at Facebook's business from all angles as the social network prices shares for its IPO. And up next, stick around for our BUS Bite, one number that reveals a whole lot. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern on Inside Track, we'll continue with the latest coverage of Facebook as investors await the IPO. The books are closed, and tomorrow we find out the price. And now it's time for the BUS Bite, where we focus on one number that tells a whole lot. What do we got today?
We got a big number. The number is $67 million. That's the tax bill that Eduardo Severin's going to save, estimated, by renouncing his U.S. citizenship.
I've seen a few interviews with him in the last couple of days. He claims it is not because of taxes.
Yeah, he just did one with the Times where he said, I am a global citizen. I was an American citizen for 10 years, but I was born in Brazil.
But I've always considered myself a global
I can think of 67 million reasons he wants to be a global citizen.
Well, and now this gets into a tax debate, and less of a tech debate, but your personal income tax only gets, I guess, affected if you're going to go out and sell all that stock. Some people say this is more a story of estate and gift taxes ultimately.
But live off the gains.
As Corey mentioned, 67 million regions.
What I thought was interesting in that article, he talked about sort of not knowing what to do with this newfound wealth.
He has a Bentley.
Figuring that out. Well, yeah, he's figuring out ways to spend his money, but clearly not all of it. There is $3 billion that he's going to make it.
Well, he's invested in a bunch of companies. Yes. Jumio, a company we've had in our show, among them. Andreessen Horowitz followed on in that one, but he was there early as an investor, so clearly he knows what he's doing.
We'll keep our eyes on that guy. Won't be too hard with the Bentley, okay?
Yeah.
Tune in for our special Facebook coverage starting at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow here on Bloomberg Television.